Okay, quick update. It's been about 2 days since the last time I recorded one of these, and in that time, my word count hasn't been that great. In Final Draft, you can see a rough ballpark of page count up here, so you can see these bars. If you hover over them, you get some information about the scene. And then this giant bar over here, this is unwritten material. So the part that's been written is just this tiny part over here. In terms of page count, here's the first page in the right hand side of the window. Here's the second page, and it just barely starts in on the third page. So uh, when I had finished my update last time, I had been writing this action scene and I really had it in my mind and I thought I was going to pants this project because I had that fight scene and I had some concepts and I had some ideas and I thought, well, you know what, I'm just going to have to write this thing and kind of flesh it out and see where it goes and maybe I'll finally get some traction into the scene. I tried doing that. I tried pantsing it and I felt like I ended this scene, really, really strong, where I was happy with it, where he's in this fight, and then here I've got him, and the gang boss asks him like, who are you? What's wrong with you? And he says, I don't know where to start. And then he knocks out the gang boss. And then I wanted to leave on kind of this note of suspense. And he like takes out this knife and he says, "Time to make the donuts." Right? I think that's a really nice way to segue out of that scene. And then I wanted just a really stark difference. And so I thought, okay, let's put him into something just much more everyday, much calmer, much, for lack of a better term, nicer. And so I thought, okay, let's go to the Rachel character, and I put her in a baseball field, and she's sitting in the bleachers, and she's got like a backpack, and I thought maybe she's studying, and maybe she's like watching the Redeemer play baseball, do a practice or something like that. And I thought, okay, that's a nice contrast. Um, and then I had nothing. Like I just truly had nothing at all. Um, I stared at the computer for like what felt like a really long time. I don't know how long that actually was, maybe 15 minutes. And I had no ideas. I don't really know who she is as a character yet, and I was trying to figure that out. I was trying to make some decisions, and I was really having a hard time doing that. So after I sat with that for a while, I just started going back to some of my concept stuff. So you'll see if you look over here on the beat board that the beat board has a few more things on it than it did earlier. And then up here on the timeline, I've put some of those beats in. Um, Everything here on in this right hand section, this is kind of like the rough timeline outline that I want. So I've broken it up into the act structure, and I've put in my structure points here. At first, I thought that this was going to have a three-act structure. I think three-act structures work really, really well, but I'm feeling like this is going to be more like a four-act structure. So I was thinking the first act could be becoming the Redeemer, so that's more of an origin story, and then I've got the Act Two, just being the Redeemer. Um, so I say like this first redemptions and just do this as a power fantasy, and then Act Three he goes too far, so he is the Redeemer and like he does something, maybe probably something violent, and this is where he's going to have his moral crisis, and he's got to find his way back, which is Act Four, right? He's got to redeem himself, and I think it's going to be really interesting to work with those concepts and think about what does that mean? What does it mean to redeem other people? What does it mean to redeem oneself? So that's all of the stuff that I'm really, really interested in working on. And that actually got me a few ideas, right? So one of the things that I wrote in was this idea of redemption, right? So I'm calling it redemption, and the idea of being of him being the redeemer is that he is going to kill criminals and then harvest their organs for transplant and redeem them in this way. But he's also redeeming them for money because the accident that he's in is going to take away his source of income. So now he needs to pay his way in the world, and he's going to redeem them for cash, right? And then he's going to morally redeem himself from the terrible things he does by the end of the story. So there's like a lot of wordplay in here, way more than I usually do. But I think it's interesting. I think that's a concept that I'm willing to work with. Um, I did a little bit more fleshing out of characters over here, but really what I've done is I've just been thinking about that concept and thinking about, okay, if that's the arc that he has, he becomes the Redeemer, he has the good times, then he has the fall, and then, he's got to bring himself back up. Like that's an interesting arc. I think that's an arc that I can work with. And then I've been thinking about, well, what are all the things that happen, right? So I've got to have like where does he come from? And then he's got to get hurt, and he's got to like sit with that hurt. And then this scene, I put this in this gray here because I don't know if this scene is actually going to work out. Maybe he wakes up in the hospital and he does some stuff. I don't know. It doesn't feel quite right, but it feels like maybe. So I think that this is a scene that I might write out, but I'm only going to work on this scene if I don't have other material that's working for me. Put that kind of on the back burner and keep myself in stuff that I think is going to be more likely to get into the script. And then I want him to have like a really sad note where he realizes that he's really hurt, because I think that this is a really interesting moment where like something happens to him and he's got to be able to fight. Like he can't just be like always like in a bed and always weak and all of that. But he's got to have limits, and his injury has to put limits on him. So I think he needs a very discrete moment where he's going to do something. It's going to be very emotionally painful for him because he's going to do something that he really wants to do, and he's really used to being able to do well, and he's going to do that thing really, really badly, and that's going to hurt. So that's where I'm really going to put the screws on him as a character. And then I think maybe as he becomes the Redeemer, he drifts apart from Rachel. Um, and then from there everything goes like a little blurry. I don't really have all of that yet. Where I am in terms of writing out these scenes is I've started writing out this hospital room scene, and I don't know how I'm going to get him injured. I don't know if I actually want to show that in a specific scene, or maybe I just have him wake up just post whatever accident he has. And maybe, I just go right into like the recovery process, because sometimes an event that's unsaid I think can be more powerful than one that's seen. Um, there's also some potential to talk about like the traumas that we forced down and the things that this character might have blacked out, and this gives me a lot of leeway in terms of maybe I just put him right into the recovery and we don't get a specific nice scene where he gets hurt, but I can bring that in as like inserts where I just we can weave in like just like a few seconds of like intense violence that will really bring out that experience of post-traumatic stress, right? I think that those can be moments that like cripple him, that disorient him. If I need to weaken him temporarily, then I can do that. There's a lot psychologically to work with there, so that actually feels like something that can be very bountiful for me as a writer. And I think that as a writer, you're always looking for that stuff, right? You're always looking for, okay, what's the thing that I can do that's going to get me scenes? What's the thing that I can do that's going to get me opportunities to write something really interesting? Um, so that's kind of where I am. If I had to kind of like reflect back on this last couple days and say, what have I learned about myself or about this story? I'd say it's really more learning about me, myself as a writer, and learning that I thought I could pants this, and I tried, and I really thought that that's how it was going to go. But I'm really, really, really bad at pantsing. And even the time that I had the project that I couldn't plot and I had to pants, I tried and it failed. And now I'm going back to plotting. But the plotting, it feels like it's productive right now, so I'm going with it. And I think that as a writer, I mean, that's just what you do, right? You just do that thing that keeps you writing and makes you feel good about the writing that you're doing. Um, So I'm gonna keep on going with this, and I'll check in with you folks in a couple days.